Okay, adding mixed numerals part 2. This is the part 2 of this worksheet, so if you just saw that, you're in the correct spot. On the back side here, the steps are just the same, and I asked the students to remember the visual models from the other side and to picture them as they work, but then just to work without them on this side. So over here, our first step is to make sure there are common denominators, because as you go down the page, that is one difference from the front side, is that gradually these don't have the same common denominators, and students have to start figuring out what they're going to do there. So in this one, you make common denominators. That's true of this one. You add the whole numbers first. Well, there's just a 1, and there isn't another, so it's going to be 1 and something. That one's done. Add the fractions. 3/4 plus 1/4 is 4/4, which again is sort of a weird-looking mixed numeral, but students quickly realize, well, that's just a whole and that's a whole, so it's 2, and there's your final answer. Next one over here, same thing. Common denominators, add the whole numbers. It's 2. Add these. That's 2/4, and then we stressed in class that you must reduce. So various reduction strategies, one of the easy ones is they're both even numbers, just keep cutting them in half. And so the answer is reduced. And we had talked about reduced or simplest term, these sort of things, simplest terms. We talked about these phrases, and that is expected now from now on in math. So I'm going to skip down a little bit, and here I'll look at number 8. So number 8 has uncommon denominators. And unlike, say, number 4, where this one could have been rewritten as 1 1/4 plus 2/4, like that, this one here, since you're changing that into a fourth, this one here you can't just like double one of these, and you have to use your cross multiplication strategies. Of course, when you use the cross multiplication strategies, you don't multiply the whole numbers when they're attached. That's one error that students sometimes make. So basically, you see here that you're going to have a common denominator of 12 when you multiply these, and we're going to rewrite it in layers. So rewriting it in layers means you have one layer, a second layer, and you work downward like that, and that's an important sort of setup in working algebra from here on out. So they're going to have 12s on the bottoms. You can multiply across and then multiply up, or sometimes an easy thing is just say, how did I make the fourth into a 12th? I multiplied it by 3. So what I do to the top, or do to the bottom, I do to the top. 3 times 2 is 6, so that's 6/12, and of course that's equivalent to a half, and so is that. And on the top on this side, well, I multiply by 4 to make it 12, so I multiply by 4 and make it 8. And then when I come across, I add my whole numbers. So it's 2, and then this is one that does something kind of funny. The 6 and the 8 here make 14. And here is, like we talked about on the other side of the video, that's an improper mixed numeral, and you don't ever leave an answer like that. So hopefully what students will next learn to do is this sort of thing. They would learn that, well, this really means 2, and you could have 12/12, which would be a whole, and you could have 2/12 more, and that would make the 14 that's on the top, and there's still 12s. And if you see it like that, well, then that right there is 3. 2, and that's another whole, and then it's 2/12. So I'm running out of room here, but it'd be 3 and 2/12, and that reduces to 3 and even numbers 1/6, and there's your final answer. So again, you're trying to work in layers here. I didn't really use my space terrifically there, but that is the way to work it. They work on all the way down to the bottom like this. I'll see if I can pull out sort of another one that might be a little bit challenging. I think this one. One reason that this is kind of tougher again is because this is a large fraction, and so is that. So that's going to likewise make this this improper mixed numeral here. So here we go. When you look at these, yeah, you could cross multiply them and get 24 as a common denominator, but you might see that this goes into 12 and that goes into 12. So let's make them into 12ths just for the sake of it. So 2, and it's going to be 12th, and 2 and 12ths, because common denominators is always our first skill. Multiplied that by 3, so we multiply that by 3. Multiplied that by 2, so we multiply that by 2, so it's 8. Add our whole numbers, so that's 4 and 17/12. And of course 12 would go into 17 one time, so I could just add that. If I think about taking 12 from this and making this into a 5, because I'm taking away 12/12, a whole. And when I take the 12/12 away, it leaves 5/12 behind. So I borrowed, or I sort of gathered like 12/12 out of this and put it into the 4 and made it into 5, leaving 5/12 behind, and that's a reduced fraction.